after the official 6-month rehabilitation period. The Special Task Force is expected to hold its first meeting on October 11th. Separately, Communications Minister Fahmi Fadzil said all 662 children rescued from care homes linked to GISB have been issued court orders placing them under the protection of the authorities. So far, 359 GISB followers, including its top management, were detained with 80 investigation papers opened by the police against the company. The government has not made any decision yet on ending education subsidies for students from wealthier families at public higher education institutions (IPTA). Communications Minister Fahmi Fadzil says the proposal is still in the research stage as there are certain principles needed to be taken into account.
Kalau pada isu subsidi elektrik sebagai contoh, kita memberi penekanan bahawa 85% daripada pengguna di semenanjung Malaysia tidak akan terkesan dengan sebarang kenaikan. Maka kita boleh ambil itu sebagai satu prinsip. Cuma dalam beberapa perkara seperti pendidikan, dia tidak berdasarkan macam dalam kes bil elektrik is consumption based. Ya, tapi dalam isu pendidikan, mungkin kita akan teliti beberapa perkara yang lain.
Prime Minister Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim recently said that the government would review subsidies in the education sector to ensure they target deserving groups, particularly the B40 and segments of the M40. However, the removal of subsidies for students of affluent families at IPTAs, according to Higher Education Minister Dato' Sri Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, will only be implemented once it has been approved by the Cabinet. The average rent in Malaysia has risen by 3.9% to 1,995 ringgit in the second quarter of 2024 compared to the first quarter. This marks a 2.9% increase from the same period last year, according to IQI Malaysia Home Rental Index report for second quarter 2024 released by IQI. Its co-founder and Group Chief Executive Officer Kashif Ansari says for the first time in a year, the annual growth rate has accelerated rather than slowed. He said the Malaysia Home Rental Index is influenced by factors such as rental property supply and demand, seasonal shifts, the influx of international students, and investor activity. In Kuala Lumpur, rents are 44% higher than the national average and 51% higher than Selangor's average. Kuala Lumpur also saw the strongest rental growth, rising by 5% to 2,863 ringgit. In contrast, Selangor's rents remain largely stable, increasing by just 1% with an average rent of 1,899 ringgit. Looking forward, Kashif said economic growth or policy changes at home or abroad could impact yields in Malaysia. According to him, the company's forecast is for stability or a gradual increase in gross rental yields as 2025 comes. In other news, the construction progress of the National Centre for Disease Control and CDC has now reached 45%. According to Deputy Health Minister Dato' Lukanisman Awang Sauni, the centre is expected to be fully completed by July 2026.
He said that once completed, the centre, located in Bandar Enstek, Negeri Sembilan, would enhance Malaysia's preparedness for global health crises. Lukanisman added that based on findings and analysis during the COVID-19 pandemic, this centre and CDC will serve as a special diagnostic and reference laboratory, strengthening the country's ability to manage disease outbreaks. He also said that the construction of the NCDC also reinforced Malaysia's position in producing its own vaccines, providing optimal facilities for local scientists to conduct in-depth studies on diseases. The construction of the NCDC, which began in October 2021 and covers 20 acres, would feature two main blocks, namely the Control Disease Centre and the Public Health Reference Laboratory.
The public is urged to stay vigilant and prepare for potential flooding as the northeast monsoon is anticipated to arrive earlier this year. Deputy Prime Minister Dato' Sri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi says that while the monsoon typically occurs in early November, It is anticipated to start earlier this year, possibly in the 4th week of October, due to changing weather patterns. Ahmad Zahid, who also chairs the National Disaster Management Committee, said necessary preparations are underway and that the Department of Irrigation and Drainage has identified specific areas at risk of flash floods. He also emphasized that the current number of machinery and enforcement personnel are adequate and will be mobilized alongside other enforcement agencies and NGOs in a structured manner. He also urged flood victims to assist themselves and their families in relocating to safe areas rather than relying solely on enforcement agencies for rescue efforts. We'll go for a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Rambut gugur lagi? Macam mana Gunakan Pantene Baharu dengan provitamin mikro yang meresap dan menguatkan rambut dari dalam. Rambut 10 kali lebih kuat terhadap rambut gugur. Pantene Baharu.
Residents of Beirut express hope for peace despite looming uncertainty as Israel continues to strike different parts of Lebanon. Israeli airstrikes have displaced 1.2 million people in Lebanon, and Israel's intensified bombing campaign has worried many Lebanese that their country will experience the vast scale of destruction wrought on Gaza by Israel.
Actually, no, it happened before in 1982 and the Civil War, and then things became better. So I think it will become better. Okay. So be positive, yeah.
لأنه هلا صرنا نفكر بالآخرة، نفكر بالدايم، نفكر ببعدين الحياة، مش كل الحياة كلها ظهر وبسط في حياة الله نحن جايبنا على الدنيا لحتى نفكر لما بدنا نروح، لما بدنا نجي. مش كلها سيارة ولبس وأكل وتليفون، لا في أشياء كثير الواحد بيصير يفكر فيها.
Lebanon's health ministry reported dozens of deaths, including 10 firefighters killed in an airstrike on a municipal building in the border area. About 2,000 Lebanese have been killed since Hezbollah began firing at Israel a year ago in solidarity with Hamas. Most of them were killed in the past few weeks.
Meanwhile, a World Health Organization official has warned of disease outbreaks in Lebanon due to crowded conditions in displacement shelters and hospital closures. In a briefing, WHO's Ian Clark, Deputy Incident Manager for Lebanon, says there is much higher risk of outbreaks for acute watery diarrhea, hepatitis A, and a number of vaccine-preventable diseases. The UN Health Agency has already warned that the system is overstretched, and so far 5 hospitals in the country have closed and only 4 are partly functional. He added that hospitals had been shut because medics had either fled the fighting or been asked to evacuate by Lebanese authorities. At the same briefing, a World Food Programme official also voiced concern about Lebanon's ability to feed itself, saying thousands of hectares of farmland across the country's south have burned or been abandoned amid escalating hostilities. Over in the U.S., Florida is bracing for the impact of Hurricane Milton, which has intensified from a tropical storm to a life-threatening hurricane. Residents have been told to prepare for the state's largest evacuation effort in years. Early Tuesday morning, the National Hurricane Center had slightly downgraded Milton to a Category 4 out of 5 storm, although officials still warn of its power and threat to life. It is still packing winds of up to 250 kilometers per hour as it passes the northern edge of Mexico. The storm is expected to hit the heavily populated city of Tampa Bay with full force on Wednesday, less than 2 weeks after the state was hit by Hurricane Helene. the deadliest mainland storm since Katrina in 2005. Helene tore through the U.S. southeast, killing at least 225 people and leaving hundreds more still missing. At least 14 of those deaths were in Florida, where 51 out of 67 counties are now under emergency warnings as Milton approaches. In other news, a U.S. judge has ordered Google to overhaul its mobile app business to give Android users more options to download apps and make in-app payments. This will mandate changes for Google to increase competition in Google's Play Store, including making Android apps available from rival sources. The injunction issued by U.S. District Judge James Donato in San Francisco will deny Google to prohibit the use of in-app payment methods and for it to allow users to download competing third-party Android app platforms or stores. The ruling is the most significant outcome of Epic Games' antitrust lawsuit against Google filed in 2020. The Fortnite's creator accused Google of anti-competitive practices with its controls over app distribution and payment. The injunction would go into effect on November 1st, though Google said it will appeal the court's decision. The ruling follows a similar setback in August when a different judge found that Google's world-leading search engine was also an illegal monopoly. That wraps up AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.